Greetings, 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 and greetings once again. Welcome to the podcast, the show, The Silence of Our Friends. That's right. You're engaged in an insightful, hopefully, prayerfully insightful evening. And the podcast is entitled The Silence of Our Friends. Dr. King once, in one of his many speeches, or maybe even sermons, if you will, made an allusion, and he said, what will be remembered in the end will not be the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And it's from the latter portion of that statement that we have dubbed our show title, The Silence of Our Friends. And it's all about finding a cause, understanding a cause. It was King David who asked the Israelitic army, is there not a cause? His older brothers who were engaged in Saul's army when approached by Goliath, a 9 to 10 foot giant. And he was a warrior, skilled in war. And it's kind of the scenario we see today, that we have a political affront where we have Goliaths in the Senate, in the for the vote for presidency. We have Goliaths as far as mentalities and as far as long-lasting traditions of socioeconomic inequities and unfairness. And so we are, as people of color, black and brown people, facing a Goliath. But it was King David, soon to be King David, as a youth, who asked the question, is there not a cause? And so this program, this show, is designated to find the relative and relevant causes for the lack of silence, the refusal to be silent again. And I believe everyone has a voice. As a matter of fact, voting is your voice. And if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. And I sure wish someone would mention that to some of our I'm looking for, and you'll notice I hesitate on this show because I'm looking for words not to communicate anger or hostilities nor disrespect. But sometimes I have to search and hold back my typical thought process and go through the library of my mind and find adequate and accurate, maybe even appropriate words to convey without anger and hostility. But I'm a little besmirched by 50 Cent, and I understand why he doesn't have the S on sense, the word sense, and it's just 50 Cent. I get it now, because sense, C-E-N-T-S, would go with sense, S-E-N-S-E. And the same holds true for Ice Cube. It's amazing that you have people who would want to be the voices for people of color and have no credentials, no platform other than their entertainment. And further to find that these men, these persons who have now allied in some sense themselves with this president, number 45 in the Republican Party, at the sacrifice of people of color, black and brown people. All of their careers, 20 years or better, they have been anti the government, anti that which has not been profitable for people of color, for their own community, their own cultures. And now, because there's a bag involved, I'm sure if we get down to the bottom of the deal, we will understand that someone has gotten the bag. And colloquially, that just means that someone has gotten paid for their approval, for their endorsement, or for their performance. And these men have never voted before, by their own admission, never voted before. So how could you be a proponent for people of color or your own culture and you've never voted? Now, all of a sudden, you have you've been credentialized, and you're in a position to speak for black and brown people. And at that, to connect with this president who has had an attitude and an atmosphere about him of hate, dog whistling, stoking the fire, all of these allegories, perhaps metaphors, that speak to his advancement of segregation and in many instances. So I don't want to get too far off with that. But this program has to do with speaking truth to power. And when we talk about speaking truth to power, I gave you a definition on last week's show. I want to give you the definition again. Why don't I first of all start off before I give you the show topic? This is the election 2020, the love affair between President Trump and white evangelicals, part 2. The specific show tonight is Trump culture. What will this culture look like if allowed to continue? Now, speaking truth to power is this position of having the courage to address this. Now is the polar opposite of being silent, of just going along to get along, or not creating or attempting to create a rift. Having the courage to address a subject where wrong is involved. And I love the memory of my father so much. He taught us growing up, right is right and wrong is wrong. He said, even if it's me, if I'm wrong, I'm just wrong. Wrong doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a face, nor does it have positions, nor does it have popularity, nor does it is it judged by way of what someone earns, what they possess, what they have, so forth and so on. Right is right, and it stands by itself, and wrong is wrong, and it stands alone as well. But this definition, again, speaking truth to power, having the courage to address a subject where wrong is involved, comma, where people of power and influence are involved, rather than keeping silent, which in most cases is easier. I want you to hold on to the justification. And each week I like to give the show justification, because many people would say to me, because I'm a churchman, a pastor, people would say, stay in your corner, stay in your lane, and legislate, arbitrate, if you will, the church affairs and church business, but stay out of the world. But Jesus said, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. Not being of the world does not mean that we don't have a vote and we don't have a voice as believers, or as Christians, as some would like to refer to themselves as being. It literally means that you don't have the mindset, the temperament of the world. You're not, as a believer, as a follower of Jesus Christ, you're not dancing to the drum beat that the world outside of Christianity dances. And even further, I'd like to throw this in. Jesus went so far as to say, and this is really the impetus, if you will, of the show, the premise in one sense. Jesus said, what would it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? And I think white evangelicals have lost their souls. I think they've lost their souls. Your soul is your feeler, your thinker, your chooser. Your ability to be persuaded, your ability to be influenced. It's the decision-making part of a man. Man is a tripartite being. He is a spirit, an ever living, never dying, always existing spirit. And he has a soul, which is his intellect, will, emotions, as I alluded to earlier, his feeler, his thinker, and his chooser. His soul and his spirit tabernacle while in the earth in a physical structure of protoplasm, and it's called the physical body. It's the earth suit. You are not your earth suit. The earth suit is not you. It is the tent. It is the place of mobility, the place of animation, the place of interaction in the terra firma, in the physical natural realm. But once you leave this realm, as you were before you came into this realm by way of your mother's womb, you did not have a physical body, and you will leave it here. But now gaining Jesus Christ, gaining the kingdom of God, has to do with all of the inferences and all of the involvements of a man or woman while they're here in the earth realm. And so since I've gone pretty long as far as the introduction is concerned, let's go further. Remember, Dr. King even said there's nothing in the world more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. On one side of the equation, you have those who are sincere, but in their sincerity, they're ignorant. They are not knowledgeable of the facts. Someone has bamboozled them. Someone has hoodwinked them. They've been fooled. They walk in a dubious state. They are enamored by falsehoods. You talk about fake news. They're enamored by someone else's influence. And so, but then the other side of the equation are the thinkers, those who are agile as far as their mental capacity is concerned. And King refers to them as conscientious, though stupid. Stupid. They have a mental block. They can only go so far as what they've been taught, things they've encountered personally, and what has been handed down from generation to generation. Allow me to speak to a few current events. Again, thank God that we were able to have in Alabama, Jefferson County, as well as its cutoff, Saturday voting, the 24th, this past Saturday, as well as the 17th, the previous Saturday, at courthouses, two courthouses in Jefferson County. Thank God for that. Now, voting comes up exactly a week and a day from today, November 3rd. Regarding voting, the polls are usually open from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. But if your vote didn't matter, the suppressionists would not fight so rigorously to cause your vote not to be counted. And there are all kinds of things that have been pulled out here lately, and I don't have time to allude to them. Just a few comments, however. The last date for voting in person, referred to as VIP voting, voting in person, by way of absentee ballots, which means because of the coronavirus and this global crisis, there have been provisions made so that an individual can, instead of mailing their ballot in, they can walk it in, and it's called voting in person. But the last day for that is October 29th. October 29th. The last date that mail-in ballots should be received is by, if you are just going to mail it in, by the 29th now of October. Now, it is important that you don't fall for the okie doke, as some have, and you can verify that your vote has been tallied, has been counted and received and not thrown out by contacting the clerk of your local county, the clerk of the county. And they can tell you by way of your social security number and other ID whether or not your vote has been received. Some have been thrown out already because of the first provision and the information that came out that said that you did not, in the case of a mail-in ballot, have to have a witness, or you did not have to have it notarized. Now they've come back and said that that provision and information was incorrect, that those persons who voted by way of mail-in ballots and did not have it witnessed by two other witnesses, I think it is at least two signatures, or having it notarized. And it's just safe to be covered along those lines. And make sure that you have a clean ballot, that no one makes any marks. They can't write D. That's your ballot. Can't write D for Democrat or R for Republican. That is your ballot. And if they write on it, they take that liberty, then you have the liberty and the responsibility to make sure that your vote is not discounted or thrown out, disqualified by way of having additional marks on the ballot. I want to redefine, and it's very important that, let's see, where can I go here? One of the first things I want to do tonight is call your attention to, and I alluded to this a few months ago, but it's very important. What did I just say? It is very important that you would make yourself a responsible party of one and listen to a YouTube presentation by way of Dr. Robert Leonard Schneck. I'll spell it for you. Robert is the common spelling, R-O-B-E-R-T, R-O-B-E-R-T, Robert Leonard, L-E-O-N-A-R-D, Schneck. It's how it's pronounced, S-C-H-E-N-C-K, S-C-H-E-N-C-K. Now, he has a YouTube CNN interview about 3 or 4 months ago, and it has over 2.4 million views. It's legitimate. It's himself speaking as a former member of the white evangelical group. This is a group of ministers who teach Jesus Christ as Lord, the head of the church, that his death, burial, ultimately his resurrection and ascension into heaven are the means by which, faith in those are means by which one will enter into the kingdom of God. Evangelicals, differing from the Catholic faith. So evangelicals are a part of Protestants, and Protestants are everyone else who hold Jesus Christ and God the Father as the icons of their faith, in that centrality. So a Christocentric ministry is what evangelicals are. Everything outside of the Catholic faith, from Baptists to Methodists to Episcopalians, I should say, Presbyterians, Word of Faith, Pentecostals, and the list goes on and on. But anyone who is a part of a denominational reformation or movement that holds Jesus Christ as its center. Now, when I say that the white evangelicals have lost their soul, the soul of the church is Christ. Christ, his equity, his love, his universal love. It was St. Matthew chapter 6. God, who is termed as our Father, collectively. He's a collective father, the father of the black as well as the father of the white. And you have not seen that lived out from the beginning of the birthing of this nation. You've seen a scale that has been tipped and not even taken into consideration black and brown people. Now, anyone who takes any issue with that, just research it. Entering into the picture is black man enslaved in America. And even while the country was being formed by way of its own constitution, by way of its own Declaration of Independence from Britain, Great Britain, at the same time, the plantations and the fathers and framers of this country had and owned slaves. Okay, I think it was 41 out of the 56 signers and framers, fathers and framers of the country, were declaring themselves independent from the tyranny of Britain, only to find out behind the surface, in a hypocritical way, they were brutally emaciating an entire 12 to countless other millions of black and brown people from Africa. So here he is, Robert Leonard Schneck. The CNN interview is entitled Reverend, quote, end quote, Reverend reveals what evangelicals say privately about Trump. So he's a part of the formerly white evangelicals. He sat at the table. He sat with the president. He sat with the power brokers of these large movements who are white, my brothers, with whom I differ in opinion, and my soul is different. My soul is troubled even today. Some of whom, these men, I've held in great esteem and high regard for years, but now we're beginning to see, as the old people said, where the rubber meets the road, we're beginning to see the truth about men who are not of color in a lot of respects, and they've just tolerated. They have just tolerated, because the soul of Christ is evangelical in the sense of bringing all men to himself. And so he, in this interview, and again, it's a YouTube interview with over 2.4 million views, he lays down the tracks of their contract, white evangelical pastors and spiritual leaders contract with this President Donald John Trump. And in exchange for their collective moving people to vote for him, he has promised several things. Number one, access to his office. Secondly, he has promised them by way of this interview and by way of this person who has sat at the table, he has promised them that he will stack the Supreme Court and all other judgeships with conservative right wing fellows, if you will, to support their causes. Thirdly, he has promised them that if they are able to swing votes his way, and has gone on with his first presidency, he has promised that he would be the proponent of abortion rights, voting against that, and doing his best to repeal Roe v. Wade, as well as gun control. Those are really the three tenets by which the white evangelicals, in my view, have lost their soul. Now, when we talk about this tonight, I want to go further. According to the Pew Research Center, and the article is entitled Religion in Public Life, March 2020, these are among the key findings of a new survey conducted February 4th to the 15th, 2020, among 6,395 U.S. adults. This survey was done online, so this is not a smidgen of people. This is a large swath, 6,395 adults. Here we are. The survey finds that white evangelicals largely see Trump as fighting for their beliefs, and I've given you the tenets, the three tenets, and the trade-offs. Fighting for their belief and advancing their interest, and they feel their side generally has been winning recently on political matters important to them. But when it comes to Trump's personal qualities and conduct, many express mixed feelings, even among this strongly supportive constituency. Most do not view Trump as very religious. Now, this is in their own words. This is how most white evangelicals view this president. They know he is not religious or spiritual, my better word, honest, secondly, or a morally upstanding person. Though many white evangelicals go so far as to say he is somewhat religious. They speak out of both sides of their mouths, fairly honest or fairly morally upstanding. So it's amazing to me that these spiritual leaders who've taken a vow to God to be champions of truth and champions of justice and champions of equity and fairness and the love of the brotherhood perpetuated through Jesus Christ to all men. And I really understand in the preamble of the Constitution where we speak about this word men. And when I use the word men, I now understand that most people who are not of color, some of whom I should better say, have never accepted men as equal. We do not hold these truths that all men have been created equal, unless you question whether black and brown people are exactly human to the same equitable status as all. And so I broke this survey down to a subheading, beliefs versus morals. More broadly, the survey finds that U.S. adults prize a president who lives a moral and ethical life more than they care about having one who is religious. So that just shows you the culture that we are embracing today. Most people are saying he doesn't have to be super spiritual, but as long as he's upstanding. More than 6 in 10 Americans say it is very important to them to have a president who personally lives a moral and ethical life. By comparison, just 1 in 5 say it is very important for a president to have strong religious beliefs. And even fewer respondents think it is vital for the president to share their own religious beliefs. And let's just go on. I'll go have some commentary. White evangelical Protestants are particularly likely to hold this view. 2/3 of white evangelicals say it is very important to have a president who stands up for their religious beliefs. About double the shares who say it is very important for a president to have strong religious beliefs. So they want him to, whatever the cost, stand up and support their white evangelicals' beliefs. White evangelicals say Trump fits the bill. Fully 8 in 10 white evangelical Protestants say that the phrase "fights for what I believe in," quote, end quote, describes Trump, quote, end quote, very well, or, quote, end quote, fairly well, including roughly half who say this describes him very well. More of a white, and I'm building the case, just stay with me. More of a white evangelical Protestants overwhelmingly feel that the Trump administration has helped 59% rather than hurt 7% the interest of evangelical Christians. And so a glowing amount say that he has championed their causes. I don't know how that affects the causes of all the rest of us, but they're saying he has fought well for their causes. Let's move on here. In regard to white Protestants and white non-born-again Protestants, this is kind of confusing, but I guess you would say white dedicated Protestants who are born again, and then other people who are not necessarily born again, but they're not Catholic. So they fall into the other category of non-born again Protestants. More than half of the people in both groups say they agree with Trump on nearly all of the important issues facing the country. Now hear this. In the current survey, 83% of white evangelicals identify with or lean toward the Republican Party, as do 64% of white Protestants who are not evangelical and 65% of white Catholics. So The Guardian, another article I've discovered entitled "Unparalleled Privilege: Why White Evangelicals See Trump as Their Savior." I didn't write this. Now I'm building the case. Why are white evangelicals in this love affair with this president, Donald Trump? Why is it that these men and women who have for years taken a stand, or at least it appeared to that they've taken a stand for godly principles and to love all men fairly, why have they sold their soul to create this Trump culture? In this article, the president is about as far from a model of piety as can be imagined, but many reach for a biblical figure to justify their support. So they have held this man up as King Cyrus. King Cyrus was, historically and biblically speaking, a man whom God used, though he was a Persian, really an enemy to the Jewish people, but God raised him up as a king of Babylon to set the Jewish people free. And these men have likened President Trump to a common day King Cyrus. So again, the article makes the statement, and this is by way of Rachel Laser, president and CEO of Americans United, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to the separation of church and state. So she makes the statement, he confers privilege, the president, referring to him, confers privilege in exchange for constant loyalty at the ballot box, no matter what he does. That's what he wants. And these evangelicals are in lockstep with him regardless of his actions. Now, because of the conservative right's opinion regarding the LGBTQ community and abortion, which is also called reproductive rights, Trump is conferring unparalleled privilege on one narrow slice of religion, that being the white evangelical community. So the question really becomes, if these white evangelicals are surrounding this president because he represents their interests and their causes, What does that say about them, white evangelical leaders, spiritual leaders, being concerned about the causes of all men? If they're only concerned about their causes, and some of these men are very wealthy, very, very affluent, but what does it say about their concern regarding the least of these, our brothers? Now, evangelicals, as Dr. Schneck would say in his CNN interview on YouTube that I alluded to earlier, he said the white evangelicals began with the causes of the poor, building universities and building schools and building clinics and hospitals so that people, particularly the indigent, could have these resources available to them. But the script has flipped. And if you want your vote to matter for the equity of all people, I would urge you to do your research about, and not just take the words of these men. So they're concerned about their causes. So let's look, and I want you to note this article. And I won't be able to go through it all. I see my time is trying to catch up with me, but I want to show you the inequity, the lopsidedness of these men and women's, in the case of white evangelical spiritual leaders, their trade-offs. I mean, last week we took a look at just the egregious activities, the moral decline of President Donald John Trump in just 2016. Tonight I want to cover 2017 and 2018. I doubt if I'll be the list is so long I probably will not be able to cover it all. But there's an article entitled McSweeney's, MC, small letter C, capital SWEENEYS, McSweeney's Internet Tendencies, the completed listing so far of atrocities of this president. And when I did the research, the atrocities that made the report were 940. And again, McSweeney's Internet Tendencies, the completed listing so far of the president's atrocities, the atrocities that have made the news. Now, it is amazing to me that these men and women of God, and I use that term very loosely, would normally be preaching and posturing against immoral behavior, and particularly sustained immoral behavior, immoral activity. They would have, in any other sense, snapped down on this individual and would have thumped the Bible to no end. But you see, none stands now and say right is right and wrong is wrong. It's almost like white is right and brown and black are wrong. And this president just speaks to the racial divide, and the country has lost its soul. The white evangelicals, in my mind, have lost their souls. Just October, let's just end. October 13, 2016, Lisa Boyne accused Donald Trump of sexual misbehavior. October 14, 2016, Christian Anderson claimed Donald Trump groped her in the early 1990s. Now, this is just the lawsuits that were filed and accusations and alleged activities from 2016. October 14, 2016, Samantha Holvey described Donald Trump's sexual misconduct at the 2006 Miss USA pageant. October 14th, Summer Zervos, a former contestant on The Apprentice, accused him of sexual assault. October 15th, Kathy Heller accused Donald Trump of sexual assault. October 21st, 2016, Karen Virginia accused Donald Trump of groping her. Let's keep going. October 22nd, Jessica Drake, adult film actor and director, accused Donald Trump of inappropriate sexual conduct. contact. October 27, 2016. I'm trying to get into 2017, but the list was so long of 2016. 2017 we're trying to get there. But I just want to show you the proof. October 27th, Nimi Lakosvin, I think it is, former Miss Finland, alleged that Donald Trump had sexually harassed her. November 13th, 2016, Ivanka Trump accompanied her father on his presidential interview with 60 Minutes. Ivanka's upscale jewelry brand used her father's political appearance to promote a $10,800 bracelet she had worn during the broadcast. That was the foreshadowing of this man's uncontrolled use of his office for political gain, which is against every constitutional ethics law in America, these yet to be United States. November 18th, even though he said he would not settle the case, Donald Trump agreed to pay $25 million to settle his Trump University fraud lawsuits. Now, you'd have to study that out and see the real story there. Just fraudulent on every tier. November 27th, without citing evidence to support his claim, Donald Trump tweeted, quote, "In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide," and this is just after the 2016 election, "I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally," end quote. This claim has repeatedly been debunked, found to be untrue. The end of December 2016, Donald Trump, senior advisor Jared Kushner, incoming national security advisor Michael Flynn, and Russian ambassador Sergei Kalasyk met at Trump Tower to establish a line, quote unquote, of connection with the Russians. The meeting occurred around the time that the Obama administration was placing sanctions on the Russian government for interfering with the 2016 election. January 11th, 2017, Donald Trump's lawyer, Sherry Dillon, stated that Trump would, quote, "voluntarily donate all profits from foreign government payments made to his hotel to the U.S. Treasury," end quote. 2 months into his president, no evidence that Trump ever followed through with this existed. January 17th, after accusing him of sexual misconduct, Summer Zervos also filed a defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump, tarnished her reputation, so forth and so on. Before his election, January 20th, Donald Trump had promised to entrust management of his companies to his children. But on the day Trump took office as president, state officials still had not received paperwork demonstrating that Trump had relinquished ownership of any of his companies. In his first conference, January 21st, 2017, as White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer stated emphatically that the gathering on the National Mall for Trump's inaugural address, quote, was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration period, end quote. Photo evidence of Barack Obama's first inauguration and subsequent crowd analysis of Trump's crowd proved this was, once again, untrue. January 22nd, senior White House counselor Kellyanne Conway said that Sean Spicer's false statements about the crowd size at Donald Trump's inauguration were not lies, but, quote unquote, alternate facts. Check that out. January 22nd, Donald Trump refused to release his tax return to the public. Now, for 4 years, he said that he is being audited by the IRS. I happen to know and have it on a good source of authority that the President of the United States is over the IRS, and you can still produce your tax filing even though you may be being audited, which I don't want to give my opinion on that, but you can still produce that, and he has not. That should stink to high heaven. 3 days after Donald Trump took office, January 23rd, the Trump Organization filed paperwork confirming Trump's resignation from over 400 companies. This suggests that for the first 3 days as President of the United States, Trump was also an executive in over 400 private companies. Let alone, we've just discovered last week that he has private interests in China. Private bank accounts in China. These men, our white evangelical brothers, are willing to look the other way regardless of all of these infractions, and with a resounding and emphatic endorsement, endorse this president. January 24th, we're still in the month of January 2017. Trump barred all employees of the Environmental Protection Agency from posting on social media or speaking with reporters about their work. What about freedom of speech? 25th of January, following up on his campaign promise to crack down on immigration, Donald Trump signed an executive order to both bolster the United States deportation force and direct construction of a wall along the Mexican border. After Donald Trump, January 25th, 2017, won the presidential election, his Palm Beach resort, Mar-a-Lago, doubled its initiation fee to, wait for it, in the back of the room, $200,000. Donald Trump, January 25th, signed an executive order directing the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security to withhold federal funds except as mandated by law from so-called sanctuary cities. Now, again, this is just amazing to me. Sanctuary cities are municipalities where local police will not necessarily contact federal deportation officials if they find that an arrestee is undocumented, because they prevent reflexive deportation. These areas are considered shields against deportation for established undocumented immigrants. January 25th, 2017, after Donald Trump won the presidential election, his Palm Beach resort, Mar-a-Lago, doubled its initiation fee again to $200,000. Let's go on. At a private dinner, 27th January, Donald Trump allegedly demanded loyalty. Listen to this. In all of this is back in 2017, but just these days of late, we've seen all of this corruption just come out. And you hear Tommy Tuberville talking about he's going to assist Donald Trump in draining the swamp. How much more swampy can it get? This is just egregious activities that have gone against moral standings of the presidency as well as the office of the presidency. And we're just in 2017 in January. And the list goes on. I didn't print everything that is there, that is documented. And it's amazing to me. How can we have spiritual leaders who will not come out and decry when someone is wrong? How do you retract from this and go back to sharing the good news of Jesus Christ in a balanced and unfair way and expect to be believed? I don't know how you do it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the anomaly here. Maybe I don't get it right. Maybe there's a revelation from God that's going to hit my mind and spirit later. And I'm open to that, certainly, if I am wrong. And I'll come back and do a show and acknowledge my wrong, because that's what I expect from these men. If you're going to be a leader, lead in the right way. And when you find yourself wrong, come back and acknowledge that you've been wrong. But I'm not seeing that. He's asked FBI Director James Comey for his loyalty. The FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not the president's personal Bureau of Investigation. But that's what he's done. He's stacking the court now. Supreme Court justices and he appears to be using them as his own personal defense. He's posturing for something. He's posturing for something big. I can feel it. Let's just try to end this thing. Please, I'll give you where all of these are listed again, and the McSweeney's. The article is entitled McSweeney's Internet Tendencies, and I don't want to be long and boring. The complete listing so far, atrocities 1 to 940, and I'm just in January, and our time is getting the best of us at this point. My question is, how do we hold spiritual leaders accountable who have crossed the segue or segued into politics? And I believe politics affects everything. I do believe spiritual leaders should have a voice, their own personal voice, and not necessarily attempt to politically steer their congregations or their constituency, their followership. But I do think that when you state where you are, that tells me the content of your heart. With whom you align yourself tells me your true beliefs. What was it? Elijah, for those of us who are Christians or believers, on top of Mount Carmel, he's in a political affront in 1 Kings chapter 17, and it goes all the way to chapter 19, and he says, basically, if let the God who answers by fire be God. They had a false god. His name was Baal. And he said, if you follow Baal, if Baal be God, then we'll follow him. But if God be God, we'll follow him. I mean, spiritual leaders have to be just that clear. It's Moses who is dealing with the Korites who've questioned his leadership. And God says, Moses, just stand back. I'll take care of this. And God says, all the people who align themselves with Moses, and see, this is a subject of alignment, stand over here. And those who align themselves with Korah stand over there. And God opened up a crevice in the earth, and the earth swallowed up all the Korites, Korah and all the supporters who followed him, because God pays attention to alignments. It was because of Lot, who was not even supposed to be with, his uncle Abraham. The promise was given to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. And God tells him, just don't take anyone with you, just take your wife and break away clean. But because Abram's middle brother had died prematurely, he has this young son, Lot, and Lot proved to be a lot of trouble. Abram, out of a sense of guilt and responsibility, took him. But because Lot is aligned with Abram, even though he is wrong, when Abram became blessed, Lot became blessed. We saw it at the end of Genesis chapter 12, all the way to Genesis chapter 13. The two principal characters, that being Abraham and Lot, are so wealthy that their workers, their employees cannot get along, and they have to divide from each other and create some geography in between them. Because Lot had aligned himself with Abram, he receives that which is upon Abram by God. Well, I believe alignment is just that important today. Your church pastor, your spiritual leader, I almost believe, yes, I believe it's important that we are able to live lives and lead people publicly. But I don't necessarily believe that you can have a private and public life. I think it's a conundrum. It's a walking conundrum. I don't know how you can do that, because if you're a success, it's public. If you're a failure, it's public. and people need to know where you stand on issues. And I think when people are wrong and in an overt, pronounced way, I think it's incumbent upon spiritual leaders to stand and say, no, I'm not with that. I'm not with that. I love you, brother. I love you, sister, but you're wrong. And because of my perception of where you're wrong, I can love you and not necessarily endorse you or follow you. And that is the problem I have with the body of Christ. It's created a Trump culture rather than a God culture. And if we are to be the salt of the earth, a city which is set upon the hill, whose light cannot be hidden, then we have to be in a position to endorse truth. Endorse truth. And I've just seen these men and women of the evangelical group and crew sacrifice that by all means. And so allow me to try to wrap this up again. Please do your research. The YouTube article by the CNN reporter, Reverend tells what white evangelicals say about Trump in private. And again, that's Robert Schneck. And the spelling of his last name is Schencck. Let's just wrap it up tonight. There's so much to cover and not enough time to cover it all. Please do your research. Please vote. Vote like your life depends on it and your children's lives depend on it, because they do. I don't think there will ever be a more important voting time as far as the presidency is concerned, and really all offices. So it's important. Don't forget, each Monday night we're here, and we'll be here next Monday, God willing. Please share the link. Please share the link. It is important that the electorate is informed, and we exist to bring knowledge and light and exposure to truth for black and brown people and people in general. And so I've probably lost some friends, some supporters, but if it's in the name of truth, unfortunately, I have to go with my convictions. So each Monday, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, YouTube, please share the link. Please subscribe to the channel. Please help us to increase and grow the channel. If you're viewing us by way of my personal Facebook page, Georgia Matthews II, please share it on your page and tag others if you will. And please, you can visit our ministry pages. We really appreciate your support along those lines. Remember, it was the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes that says, in a balanced way, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 7, there's a time and a season for everything. A time to rend or mend, and a time to sow. A time to tear the garment apart, a time to sew it together is what I'm saying. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. This is a time to speak. We can never be silent again. Silence is said to be golden. My axiom to that, however, is only golden until one's family and friends are negatively affected by wrongdoing. Silence, some say, is great until someone's voice is necessary to save your life or corroborate your innocence. Silence is compromise. Silence is complicity with erroneous thinking. Silence is agreement with sanitized history. Silence is co-signing with control, racist, bigoted, and supremacist mentalities. Silence caused the end of liberty and justice. Remember, we can never be silent again. And your vote is your voice. If you wish to be heard, kicking and screaming, whatever your convictions may be, at the ballot box. We appreciate you so much. You have a very pleasant evening. I'm Georgia Matthews II, and it's our happy privilege to bring you this edition of The Silence of Our Friends. And until next week at this 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'll look forward to seeing you at that time. Blessings and peace.